Look at this woman behind the bar. To most men, she was just the girl who poured their drinks. But to one man in a tailored suit, she became something else. A secret, an escape, a fantasy he kept in the dark. It started with harmless flirting, late-night conversations, a ride home in the rain, then hotel rooms, text messages, promises that his marriage was basically over. Until the night she opened Instagram and saw his smiling family, and then his phone, and found out she wasn't the only other woman in his life. Tonight, you won't hear the story from the wife. You'll hear it from the woman who became the secret, and what it costs to be the one he hides instead of the one he chooses.
My real name isn't the one I'm about to use, but for this story, you can call me Mia. This is not a story I'm proud of. It's not the kind of story you brag about to your friends or post as a cute couple picture with a hashtag. It's the story of how I became someone's secret. How I fell in love with a man I should have walked away from the moment I met him. How seduction can feel like oxygen when you're starving, and how expensive that kind of oxygen really is. I was 32 when I met him. Single, living in a big city, working long hours in a high-end hotel bar. The kind of place where the music is low, the lights are soft, and everything smells like expensive perfume and ambition. I wasn't naive about men. I'd been on dating apps. I'd had relationships that fizzled out, a few that burned hot and fast and left me in ashes. I'd promised myself I would never again let a man treat me like an option. And then he walked in. Tall, tailored suit, the kind of confidence you can't fake. He had that calm energy that fills a room without trying. Not a boy looking for attention, a man used to being noticed. He sat at the bar and smiled at me, like he already knew I would be the one serving his drink. His eyes lingered just long enough to make my pulse jump. "Rough day?" I joked, because that's what you do when you're behind a bar and someone looks like that. "You have no idea," he said with a half smile. "What's good here that's strong but dangerous?" I remember laughing and thinking, so are you. I should have trusted that first thought. He told me his name was Adrian. He ordered a whiskey neat. We talked. At first, it was the kind of small talk I had 10 times a night. "What do you do? How long have you lived here? Do you like this job?" But there was something different about the way he listened. Most men at that bar talked about themselves. Adrian asked about me. And when I answered, he looked at me like I was saying the most interesting thing he'd heard all week. I told him I was working nights while I tried to grow my portfolio as a photographer. That I loved capturing people when they didn't know they were being watched. Real expressions, real moments. He said, "That makes sense. You have eyes that notice details." It was such a simple sentence, but after years of being treated like background noise, having someone see me felt intoxicating. He didn't flirt in a cheap way. No crude comments, no "you're so hot" lines. Just subtle compliments that made me feel seen and sharp. He came back the next week, and the week after that. Always on the same night, always sitting in the same spot. Soon I found myself looking at the door around the time he usually arrived. If he was late, I felt disappointed. If he walked in, my whole body relaxed. One night, when the bar was quieter, he said, "I'm surprised a woman like you is single." I rolled my eyes. What does "a woman like me" mean? He didn't miss a beat. Smart, funny, the way you remember people's orders, the way you pay attention. Men must be blind. I laughed it off, but I went home that night replaying those words like a song. I didn't ask if he was single. He didn't offer the information. And that was my first mistake. The night he finally crossed the line from customer to something else, it was raining. The bar was almost empty, soft jazz playing, streetlights reflecting in the wet pavement outside. He stayed later than usual. We talked about everything: childhood stories, our biggest fears, the places we wanted to visit before we died. He told me he'd always dreamed of disappearing to some small town by the ocean, opening a tiny bookstore, and never checking his email again. A man in a suit selling used books by the sea, I teased. I'd pay to see that. He smiled. Maybe you'd be there, taking photos of grumpy old men buying poetry. It felt so easy, so intimate. Not in a physical way yet, but emotionally. When my shift ended, the rain was still pouring. My umbrella had broken earlier that day. "I'll drive you," he said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I hesitated. He must have seen it because he added, "Just a ride, Mia. I promise I'll behave." I got into his car. The interior smelled like leather and something expensive I couldn't name. Soft music played low, city lights blurred by as we drove. We talked the whole way to my apartment. At one point, we both reached for the volume knob at the same time, and our hands brushed.
Isn't it?
A small thing, but my heart reacted like it was a fire alarm. When we arrived, I unbuckled my seatbelt, suddenly aware of how close we were sitting. "Thank you for the ride," I said. He looked at me, really looked at me. His voice dropped just a little. "You deserve so much more than this," he said quietly. "More than working nights, more than men who don't see you. I hope you know that." My throat tightened. No one had said something like that to me in a long time. I opened the car door before I did something stupid. "Good night, Adrian," I said. "Good night, Mia." I felt his eyes on me until I disappeared into my building. Upstairs, alone, in my small apartment, I realized my hands were still shaking. I told myself, it's just chemistry. It's harmless. I had no idea how wrong that was. The messages started a few days later. He'd asked for my number casually, saying, "In case I ever want a recommendation on whiskey when I'm not at the bar." I gave it to him, telling myself it was no big deal. The first text was simple. "Made it through Monday. Barely. How's your night?" I smiled when I saw it. I took a little longer than necessary to respond, trying not to seem too eager. "Busy. A group just ordered 6 mojitos and none of them know what they want," I wrote. He replied instantly. "Sounds like my last meeting. Do any of your customers slam the table and say 'circle back' when they don't like their drink?" I laughed, standing there behind the bar with my phone in my hand, feeling like a teenager. From there, it escalated quickly. We started texting every day. Good mornings, good nights, little comments throughout the day about annoying coworkers, funny things we'd seen, songs we were listening to. He learned my favorite coffee order and started bringing it when he came to the bar. He'd hand it to me with that small smile and say, "Fuel for the night." He told me about his work, something in finance, high pressure, lots of travel. He said he hated how fake people in his world could be. "You're different," he said once. "You say what you think. I don't feel like I have to wear a mask with you." Those words, the night he finally crossed the line from customer to something else, it was raining. The bar was almost empty, soft jazz playing, streetlights reflecting in the wet pavement outside. He stayed later than usual. We talked about everything: childhood stories, our biggest fears, the places we wanted to visit before we died. He told me he'd always dreamed of disappearing to some small town by the ocean, opening a tiny bookstore, and never checking his email again. A man in a suit selling used books by the sea, I teased. I'd pay to see that. He smiled. Maybe you'd be there, taking photos of grumpy old men buying poetry. It felt so easy, so intimate. Not in a physical way yet, but emotionally.
When my shift ended, the rain was still pouring. My umbrella had broken earlier that day. "I'll drive you," he said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I hesitated. He must have seen it because he added, "Just a ride, Mia. I promise I'll behave." I got into his car. The interior smelled like leather and something expensive I couldn't name. Soft music played low, city lights blurred by as we drove. We talked the whole way to my apartment. At one point, we both reached for the volume knob at the same time, and our hands brushed. A small thing, but my heart reacted like it was a fire alarm. When we arrived, I unbuckled my seatbelt, suddenly aware of how close we were sitting. "Thank you for the ride," I said. He looked at me,
Such a lovely
really looked at
evening,
me.
isn't it?
His voice dropped just a little. "You deserve so much more than this," he said quietly. "More than working nights, more than men who don't see you. I hope you know that." My throat tightened. No one had said something like that to me in a long time. I opened the car door before I did something stupid. "Good night, Adrian," I said. "Good night, Mia." I felt his eyes on me until I disappeared into my building. Upstairs, alone in my small apartment, I realized my hands were still shaking. I told myself, it's just chemistry. It's harmless. I had no idea how wrong that was. The messages started a few days later. He'd asked for my number casually, saying, "In case I ever want a recommendation on whiskey when I'm not at the bar." I gave it to him, telling myself it was no big deal. The first text was simple. "Made it through Monday. Barely. How's your night?" I smiled when I saw it. I took a little longer than necessary to respond, trying not to seem too eager. "Busy. A group just ordered 6 mojitos and none of them know what they want," I wrote. He replied instantly. "Sounds like my last meeting. Do any of your customers slam the table and say 'circle back' when they don't like their drink?" I laughed, standing there behind the bar with my phone in my hand, feeling like a teenager. From there, it escalated quickly. We started texting every day. Good mornings, good nights, little comments throughout the day about annoying coworkers, funny things we'd seen, songs we were listening to. He learned my favorite coffee order and started bringing it when he came to the bar. He'd hand it to me with that small smile and say, "Fuel for the night." He told me about his work, something in finance, high pressure, lots of travel. He said he hated how fake people in his world could be. "You're different," he said once. "You say what you think. I don't feel like I have to wear a mask with you." Those words,
From that point on, our relationship lived in the shadows. He couldn't call late at night because of the kids. He couldn't see me on holidays because it would be too complicated. We always met in places where he was unlikely to run into people he knew. Whenever I felt the sting of being hidden, he would wrap it in romance. "This is our secret world," he'd say, brushing my hair back. "It makes it more intense, doesn't it? It's just us. No one else gets it." Being a secret, it felt less like an insult and more like an exclusive club. At least, that's what I told myself. He showered me with attention in other ways. Thoughtful texts, surprise coffees, tickets to a concert by a band I loved. Once a weekend trip to a small town a few hours away, under the excuse of a work conference he had to attend. Walking with him through those quiet streets, holding his hand in public where nobody knew us, I let myself pretend we were just a normal couple. At dinner, he leaned across the table and said, "Sometimes I think about leaving everything and just starting over with you somewhere no one knows us." My heart raced. "Then why don't you?" I asked, half joking, half begging. He looked away, then back at me with that practiced seriousness. "These things take time," he said. "There's money, custody, lawyers. I don't want to drag you into that mess. I want to protect you from it." He had an answer for everything. Every time my conscience whispered, "You're involved with a married man," he gave me a new reason to stay. "I'm basically single. She doesn't love me. We're just roommates.
"You're the only one I feel alive with." Those words were like gasoline on a fire I didn't want to put out. The first crack in his story came from somewhere I didn't expect: Instagram. I wasn't connected to him there. He didn't have a public profile under his real name, or so he said.
Isn't it?
But one night, curiosity got louder than pride. I knew his full name, his company, the names of his kids. I searched his last name. A woman's profile popped up. Her last name matched his. Her bio had a ring emoji and mom of two. Her grid was full of family pictures. Her, two kids I recognized from photos he'd shown me on his phone, and him. In one photo, they were all dressed up for what looked like a wedding. Her caption read, "My favorite person to dance through life with." In another, they were at the beach. She was kissing his cheek. The caption said, "Still my best friend after all these years." #blessed. The timestamps were recent. Weeks, not years. My hands started shaking. I scrolled more, desperately looking for proof that maybe these were old photos being reposted, but the kids looked the same age as in the pictures he'd shown me, taken recently. There were stories saved from holidays, Christmas, New Year's, Easter. He had told me he'd spent those days alone, thinking about his life. He hadn't. He'd been smiling in matching pajamas by a Christmas tree, kissing her at midnight on New Year's, hunting eggs with his kids in a sunny yard. I felt my stomach twist. In that moment, two truths slammed into each other in my mind. I was not his secret world. I was his side story. I confronted him the next time we met. We were in the hotel room again, the same place that had begun to feel dangerously familiar. He walked in with that easy smile, leaned in to kiss me, and I turned my face away. "I found your wife's Instagram," I said. He froze. The color drained from his face in real time. "What?" he said, voice suddenly thinner. I repeated it. "I found her. I saw the photos, the holidays, the captions. None of this is basically over, Adrian." For a moment, he seemed like a man whose mask had finally been ripped off. He sat down on the edge of the bed, rubbed his face with both hands, and sighed. "It's not what you think," he started. I laughed, a harsh sound I hated coming out of my own mouth. "Don't say that," I snapped. "Because unless those photos are all AI generated, it's exactly what I think. You're still fully married. You're still playing happy husband, and I am the idiot you visit between meetings." He looked up at me, eyes shiny. "It's complicated," he said again, that same tired script. "You don't understand, Mia. My marriage has been dead for years. We stay together for the kids, for appearances, for business." She posts those photos because that's the story she needs to believe. "You're the only real thing I have." There it was. The line. "You're the only real thing I have." I wanted so badly to believe him, to think I was the exception, not just one more example of his capacity to lie. I paced the room. So what am I supposed to do with that? Just keep being your escape? Keep being the one who gets the late-night texts while she gets the holidays? He stood up, came closer, lowered his voice. "We're in too deep to pretend this is nothing," he said. "I love you. I can't imagine my life without you now. I just need more time to untangle everything." More time. There is always more time when someone isn't ready to change. I didn't know that yet. Not fully. So instead of walking out, I did what hurt people often do. I stayed. The months that followed were some of the most intense and confusing of my life. On one hand, their relationship was electric. The chemistry between us didn't fade. If anything, the forbidden nature of it made everything sharper. He'd send me messages from business trips, photos of hotel rooms, voice notes late at night whispering, "I wish it was you here instead with me." Whenever we were together, it felt like the rest of the world disappeared. He knew my body, my fears, my dreams. He knew how to make me laugh in the middle of a bad day. He knew exactly what to say to make me feel chosen. On the other hand, the guilt started to grow claws. I'd be at a cafe and see a woman with 2 kids and wonder if that's how his wife looked at him, trusting, tired, oblivious. I started imagining her scrolling through her phone, posting those happy pictures, thinking her life was solid, just like I had once believed my life was solid in other relationships. The cognitive dissonance was almost unbearable. How could I be so in love with someone who was capable of such deep dishonesty? How could I hate what we were and crave it at the same time? I tried to end it 3 times. Each time, he pulled me back. He'd show up at the bar with flowers, with that wounded look, saying, "I can't lose you, Mia. Don't make me go back to pretending all the time." He didn't say, "Don't make me go back to my wife." He said, "Don't make me go back to pretending." He framed me as his truth and her as the lie. But the truth is, he was lying.
The final blow came on a day that was supposed to be special. It was my birthday. He had insisted on taking me out of the city for the night. Just us, he'd said. No hotel bars, no rushing. I want to celebrate you properly. We drove to a small coastal town, checked into a boutique hotel where the staff greeted him a little too warmly, like they might have seen him there before. I pushed that thought aside. We had dinner at a restaurant overlooking the water. Candles, wine, that easy charm he wore like cologne. He gave me a necklace, delicate, beautiful, exactly my taste. I deserved to be spoiled, he said, fastening it around my neck. One day I'll be able to do it without looking over my shoulder. I wanted so badly to live in that fantasy. Back in the room while he was in the shower, his phone lit up on the nightstand. I wasn't looking for anything. I was scrolling through my own messages. But the screen caught my eye. A notification from someone named Bella Moon. The preview read, "Last night was perfect. I can still smell you on me." My stomach dropped. I stared at the phone, willing it to be some kind of spam, a wrong number, a glitch in the universe. It lit up again. "Tell me you miss me already." I don't know what hurt more, the messages themselves or how familiar the words felt. They were the same tone he used with me, same rhythm, same intimacy. He wasn't just living a double life. He was multiplying. When he came out of the shower, towel around his waist, steam following him, I was sitting on the edge of the bed, holding his phone. "Who is Bella?" I asked. He froze. For a split second, I saw pure panic in his eyes, the same look I had seen when I mentioned his wife's Instagram. He tried to recover, reaching for charm like it was a shield. "She's no one," he said too quickly. "Just someone from work who got too flirty. It's nothing." I held up the screen with the messages. "Nothing?" I repeated. "This looks a lot like something." He sighed, ran his hands through his hair, sat down across from me. "Okay," he said. "We hooked up once. I was drunk. It was a mistake. I swear it didn't mean anything. You're the one I care about, you know that." I stared at him, and something inside me finally snapped into brutal focus. "You told her the same things you tell me. You're not a man torn between a dead marriage and a real love. You're a man who..." We argued for hours that night. He begged. He cried. He said he was lost, broken, afraid to be alone. He told me I was different, that what we had was deeper than anything else, that he'd end it with everyone if I just gave him one more chance. The phrases blurred together, a mix of confession and manipulation. At some point, a question surfaced in my mind, clear and sharp. If this is how he treats the women he says he loves, what would make me an exception?
I thought about his wife posting those happy photos, about me waiting for his stolen hours, about this Bella girl probably feeling as special and chosen as I once did. The common denominator in all our stories was him, and his need to keep himself fed on adoration, no matter how many lives he had to fracture to keep the supply going. In the early hours of the morning, I stood up, shaking. "I'm done," I said. He looked at me like I had stabbed him. "You don't mean that. You're just hurt." "I am hurt, but that doesn't make me wrong." I took off the necklace he had given me and placed it on the table beside the bed. "I won't be another secret you tell yourself a pretty story about. Find someone else to be your hiding place. I'm done." He reached for me. I stepped back. For once, I walked out of a room before he could convince me to stay. Leaving him didn't magically erase the damage. I wish I could say I woke up the next day empowered and free. I didn't. I woke up in my own bed with swollen eyes and a headache, feeling like I had ripped out a piece of myself. The shame was heavy. Not just shame for what he'd done, but shame for what I had participated in. I had been the other woman. I had believed half-truths because they were wrapped in romance. I had stood on the same side of the line as his lies and called it love. For a while, I hated myself more than I hated him. That's the thing about betrayal. If you're not careful, it turns inward. I started therapy. I joined an anonymous online group for women who had been involved with married men. At first, I thought I'd be judged there. Instead, I found story after story that sounded like echoes of my own. Different names, different cities, same pattern. Charismatic man, dead marriage, we're basically over. You're the only one who really understands me. Just give me more time. One woman in the group wrote a sentence that I never forgot. "He didn't choose me in secret because I was special. He chose me in secret because he knew he could hide me." Those words hit me harder than any of Adrian's declarations ever had. I realized I wasn't uniquely loved. I was conveniently placed. Over time, the story I told myself about that relationship changed. At first, it was, he broke me. Then it became, we broke me. Now it's something more honest. I betrayed myself the moment I agreed to be hidden. That doesn't absolve him. He lied. He manipulated. He used my empathy and my longing against me. But healing required me to look not only at what he did, but at what in me was so hungry that his crumbs felt like a feast. I started rebuilding from there. I made a promise to myself. No more half-truths. No more secret roles. If someone cannot love me in the light, they do not get to touch me in the dark. I got more serious about my photography, left the bar, started taking gigs that scared me, weddings, portraits, events. Watching couples through my lens was painful at first. Then it became a study in patterns. I saw the difference between performative affection and quiet, consistent respect. I learned to distinguish between grand gestures and small, daily acts of care. Slowly, the part of me that had equated intensity with love began to crave something else: consistency, clarity, honesty. If you're listening to this and you're where I was, caught up in something that feels intoxicating but lives in the shadows, I'm not here to judge me. I know what it's like to wait for a message that lights up your whole day, to replay every word he says and convince yourself you're the exception, to live for those stolen hours that feel more real than your own life. I also know the cost, the waiting, the hiding, the self-betrayal. The way you start shrinking your needs to fit whatever crumbs he can give without disturbing his real life. I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you what no one told me. If he truly wanted to be free to love you, he would be taking concrete steps in that direction, with or without your presence. If the only place your love exists is in secret hotel rooms, late-night calls, and one-day fantasies, then you are not living a love story. You're living in someone else's escape hatch. You deserve better than being the person someone runs to when they're bored, lonely, or unhappy with the choices they refuse to change. You deserve to be chosen in the daylight. My story is not clean. It's not flattering, but it's real. And if it helps even one woman step out of the shadows and back into her own life, then the most painful chapter of mine will have mattered. He taught me how dangerous charm without integrity can be. I taught myself, finally, how to walk away from it. I'm not the woman waiting by a hotel window anymore, hoping he'll keep his promise. I am the woman who is no longer available to be kept in the dark. And that, more than any words he ever said, is the truest thing I know.